Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this Saturday for Pathways to the Dark. This is sponsored by the Niagara Arts and Health Center via Visually Impaired Advancement and Humanities New York. We'll hope you'll join us each and every Saturday for these writing workshops and classes for 2022, either remotely or in person. Today, we're meeting on Zoom and here at the Lewiston Public Library in Lewiston, New York. Today's class focus on poetry and short story with Dr. Bob Giannetti and Nora Perez. I'll turn it over to them for this major introduction, but before I do, one bit of advice from Lauren Petrocelli from VIA about how to conduct yourself on a Zoom meeting with people with visual impairments.
Hi, everyone, it's Lauren. So a couple tips for everyone with interacting on Zoom. First thing is it's helpful to say your name when you begin speaking, like I did when I started. Hi, it's Lauren is great. It's also good to say something when you're done speaking so other people know it's their turn. So you can say something like I'm done, check, or over and out. Also, when we do introductions, Kelly is our moderator and she'll be addressing each person by name when it's your turn to introduce yourself. You're welcome to share anything you'd like with the group, but if you're not sure what to say, a good beginning would be your name and what city you're from. If you prefer not to say anything else after that, that's fine. But if there's any additional details about yourself you'd like to share, that's fine too. Check.
Well, if we'll start with the roll call then, just to make sure everybody associates a face or a voice with the name. So shall we start?
Mr. Bob Giannetti, please introduce yourself.
Bob Giannetti, here at the Lewiston Library. Over.
Nora Perez, here at Lewiston Library. Over.
Therese.
Hi, this is Therese, at the lovely Lewiston Library on this fine, beautiful sunny day.
Hi, I'm Stacey, also at the library. Over.
I am Helen Clark at the library. Over.
Hi, Lauren Petrocelli from the library.
Hi, this is Kelly. I'm at the library as well. We're going to now be introducing our guests online. Christopher.
I am Christopher Saban, Cincinnati, Ohio. Over.
Daniel's iPad.
Hi, I'm Daniel. I am first time in this meeting. I do have a quick question. I have a black box in the middle of my screen that's saying this is being recorded. How do I get rid of that?
There's a little red button that'll say got it.
Yeah.
Do you see a red button there, or it's on the
Got
bottom?
Yep,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us, Daniel.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Geraldine.
I'm Geraldine Wilson and I'm from Buffalo, New York. I'm done.
Michael.
Good morning. Mike Stacey from the Berkshires in Massachusetts. I'm done.
Rosetta.
Good morning, Rosetta Smith from Niagara Falls, New York.
And I think we have everyone.
Nope,
Well,
two more.
no, Christopher.
Shima.
Hey guys, I'm speaking from Toronto, Ontario, actually. This is my first time in this meeting. I actually just like Daniel, this is my first time here. I searched up like writing workshops online and I saw this, so I just joined. Yeah, I can't wait to see what we have in store for today and check.
Thank you. And our last guest who's currently signed in, Stacey.
Who is it?
Hi, everybody. I'm coming to you from Niagara Falls. It's cutting in and out. So, because I'm in a car, but I didn't want to miss the meeting. So I'm here. Okay.
Through
Well,
the
that's everybody.
through the magic of technology, you can drive in a car and participate in the workshop.
Yes,
But not drive. I presume you're a passenger.
there's
No,
somebody.
I'm a passenger. I'm heading to the farm.
11:30 a.m. One notification.
Okay. All right, if everybody can mute themselves.
I think there was one person left in the upper right.
We're still, okay, everybody's still there.
Okay. But I don't think she introduced herself.
Yep, everyone has.
Okay.
Okay, let's hit it.
Okay, welcome, everybody. This is a very, very exciting day. We have some very lovely surprises for you. Bob is going to be talking today about the value of literary art. And I am going to be very brief this morning because we do want to hear your stories and your poetry, make room for that. I will tell you about the surprises, though. I met Stacey Abrams yesterday when I was taking a walk, and she was very excited because she had just had news that her piece that she read to us, I believe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, was published yesterday in the Buffalo News in their My View column, which is a very, anybody who makes it to the My View column of the Buffalo News is an exceptional writer. And right from the start, when I heard her read that piece, I got very excited. She submitted it and it was published yesterday, and that was a big day. So that kept me going until later. Well, I think I heard from Kelly after midnight last night, and her news was that Geraldine, are you listening, Geraldine? That you had submitted your poem. Well, you wrote a poem, you said very quickly, and you submitted it to, I believe it's a magazine, is that correct? And anyway, she was awarded an honorable mention, $25 prize, and it's going to be published as well. So I think that's just the best possible news. My remarks will be brief this morning. I had made notes about a book of memoir, a nice little book I picked up online. And the title of it is called The Memoir Project. It's a new edition. It's by Marion Roach Smith, who apparently is an expert at telling people how to best write a memoir. I've gone through it. She has some wonderful tips. So I jotted them all down and I thought, no, I'm just going to give you the name of this. I don't know if it's available on Audible books. I hope so. I should have checked that out before I came. But it's a very thin little book. It's not very long. I got it for about $6. So you can check that out. And I hope if you're very interested in memoir writing, I think you'd find it very helpful. The second book,
What's her last name?
her name is Marion Roach Smith. She's funny, she's smart, and she's practical. And I think you get a lot out of it, Mike. The second book I'd mentioned before, it's called The Beauty of Dusk by Frank Bruni, who's a columnist for the New York Times. And he used to be a restaurant critic as well. He lost his sight in one eye very unexpectedly after a small stroke. His other eye seems to me to be okay, but he certainly was handicapped at first by his loss of vision. But he has written a wonderful book. It's not just wonderfully written, gracefully written, funny and deep and wise, but his attitude is so positive, and it's about acceptance and adaptation. And he gives examples of many people through history who have been totally blind or very, very visually challenged, who have turned their lives around and learned how to adapt to their problems, which will be very helpful, I think, to just about anybody who has the challenge or people who know them. The examples are spectacular. Just one, for instance, in the 1700s, totally blind man who became a travel writer, a very popular travel writer, went everywhere, usually by himself, and traveling any way he could find, and went to countries where he couldn't understand a word, and became extremely well known. And I can't remember his name, it's right here, but you can read all about him. I think you will be yes, go ahead. Daniel, did you have a question? Geraldine? Yeah, Geraldine, we've lost your sound.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Yes.
Okay, can I ask that when you guys give information, for those of us that are sight challenged, if you could give it a little bit slower? I'm still trying to get the information on the memoir project, the person's name.
Yes, the memoir project by Marion Roach Smith.
Okay, Smith. Okay, and
paperback. It's very inexpensive. The second one is The Beauty of Dusk by Frank Bruni. This is a book.
How do you spell Bruni?
B-R-U-N-I, Bruni. And it's a book not just for people with vision problems. It's just a wonderful read. It's a book I want to keep and refer to. I think you'll be very, very pleased with it. Yes, and any other questions?
May I actually just jump in and say that we can send an email to the class with this information after class. So if anyone didn't get it, we'll send it after.
Yes, Lauren is saying we can send you the information on these books. I'm now on this note of celebration. One last thing I will mention is our friend Bob here is going to be at the Peace Garden in Lewiston this afternoon at 2 o'clock. There's going to be an installation of his poem titled The Peace Garden. He'll be there with friends. If anybody in the area, particularly Lewiston, I think, would be very welcome to come. And later we would go to a little pub, and Bob will buy the first round of drinks. So if you can attend, that would be very, very nice. I'm going to turn it over to Bob now, and go ahead.
Well, we have a number of things to do, but we have to hear from all of you. I think what we'll do is start with the prose and really listen to Stacey Abrams, whose piece was published in the Buffalo News. And there are a lot of things to ask her about that. And then we will move to the poetry, to our other prize winner, Froggy, and then we will continue on with poetry. This is the first session which will have poetry as dominant in the proceedings. But don't forget, just as in the first session, there were we looked at prose, we looked at microfiction and memoir. We're going to continue to do that. And anybody who has written something in between our talk of poetry is very welcome and encouraged to read that or to talk about that in this next session, which is going to really try to focus more on the poetry. And I think what we want to do is continue to look at the difference and the similarities between prose expression and poetic expression. And there are a number of things to say on that. I guess, one of the big things that I asked you to do last time was to think about the value of poetry. Why do you write it, and why do you think people will want to read or listen to what you've written? So I'm going to have some statements about that at the end, but anybody who has taken up that challenge after we hear from the prize winners, anybody who's taken up that challenge is welcome to put something in there. And I think Mike Stacey has some more things to add to his growing memoir, so we'll hear those. I probably won't be able to give you everything at the end that I want to, because we're going to split at 1 o'clock, so I can go over and listen to the mayor. The mayor and the village board are going to be there to install this nice metal installation of my poem, The Peace Garden. If you're not going, I may have time to read it, but really may not have. But I will have some things to say about the value of poetry at the end, after we've heard from everyone. If we have to end suddenly, because time will run out, we've gone over before several times. We can't do it today, but we will certainly make up for it if we need to in future sessions. So I think we want to hear from Stacey Abrams right now. And can you tell us about what happened to you, and what a thrill it must have been, and anything else you want to say about the writing and the publication of that nice piece, which is entitled what? Over.
Take a look, Lauren, make sure it's working.
All right, we're having a little technical assist to Stacey.
Can you hear when they're speaking?
Okay.
Well, someone has to say something first.
Hello.
Stacey,
This is Stacey.
can you all hear Stacey?
Hello?
Can you all hear Stacey?
Yes.
Very little.
The microphone, break your mouth.
Can you hear me? This is Stacey.
Yes.
Better?
Oh, good. All right,
Speak
Stacey,
up a
take it
little bit.
away.
Speak
Tell us about the great experience. And it really is. I mean, to think of this happening right in the context of the workshops here is wonderful. Go ahead.
Well, that's the thing about this class. And the one thing that's very hard for me as a writer is discipline. So having to come up with something, for class to read, I'm thinking about it constantly, and it's still hard. And I had nothing by Thursday, but then I went on a bike ride and I just started thinking about what I was doing, and the story came to me. It just happened. So I was very fortunate that it came out pretty good, I guess. And thanks to Nora encouraging me to submit it to the newspaper. I did that. I never would have done that without, being in this class and having her encouragement. So, the fact that they picked it up and published it, I'm ecstatic. I'm just so surprised, and it feels really good. It really does. I'm very happy about it, and it gives me encouragement to continue writing. And everything that I'm hearing from other people in this class, this is a great class. Everyone's doing really good work, and I guess, like Nora, I would say submit your work. It doesn't hurt, right?
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, so thanks to this class, thank you, Nora, for pushing me.
Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you, Stacey.
We're all, I think, having a very good time, and we are so excited for you, and are pretty sure this will be repeated, not just for you, but for others.
I hope so. Thank you.
Maybe we should follow up with Geraldine. Geraldine?
Yeah, are we reading our pieces?
Yes,
Yes.
you will need to because because we haven't seen the publication and we are eager to hear it.
Okay,
Could you read your honorable mention, Geraldine? Do you have it?
Yes, so my daughter told me about a competition for housing opportunities made equal, which is a group that's here. I believe it's a national group. And so when she told me, I literally had less than 24 hours to write it and submit it. So I wrote a little something up, submitting it, and really didn't think about winning anything. So anyway, it's called Equal. Her roof was made of cardboard, the doors to her house too. Homeless was their address, and there was nothing left to do. Eviction, the invitation that led her to the street. Faced with the option of rent or giving her baby something to eat. He cried when his mama told him they would have to move away. To change his mama's mind, there was nothing the boy could say. What he did not hear was mama crying all that night when she read the decision made about her landlord-tenant fight. Every month a change in the amount that she did owe. Where she would get the money, mama did not know. She hung blankets skillfully over their windows at night to cover the unsealed windows. It was really quite a sight. Monthly complaints to the landlord resulted in the raising of rent. When asked about repairs, he answered, money's already spent. Months and months of asking till the blue covered her face. The conditions they were living in were utterly a disgrace. Not enough money to move, although she worked each day. Monthly rent increases left her with no place to stay. House number changed to homeless in the blinking of an eye. Mama trying to find an answer to her baby's question, why? Mama, why is our house so cold? Can you please turn on the heat? Mama, I heard a rat running last night while I was asleep. Mama had no answer. She ran out of people to call. Now into the lap of homelessness, Mama and her baby did fall. In this place we call America, surely it should be that every man, woman, and child should have the same opportunity to live in a place that is clean, safe, and rodent-free. Housing should be a right that is shared equally. So there was some guidelines you had to talk about, like either homeless or gentrification, slum landlords. There were different, categories that they asked you to write in. So I covered a few of them. I'm done.
Geraldine, let's ask you a little bit about your process and might be helpful to others. How did you start? How did you start writing? You chose your subject, obviously, and that's part of the directional aspect of what I've mentioned before, and Nora has commented on also. But how did you start that piece? Where did it begin, and how did you develop it?
Basically, well, because I was crunched for time, basically I looked at what the categories were. And then I thought about either my own lived experiences or experiences that other people had lived. Being a former teacher, I thought about some of the children and the conditions that their families lived in. I thought about some of the things that the children said in the classroom. So usually when I write, I try to hear particular voices. I don't know if that answered your question. Did that answer your question?
Oh, that's a very good comment. And I think one of the other things I've recommended here is that when you write your piece, you read it aloud to hear it yourself. Yeah. And did you do that?
Yeah, all my writing I do to read and to hear, because I think that it's a voice, and so that voice needs to be heard. I did read it to myself, Because I was crunched for time, there's a lot of probably changes and moving around of things that I would have done in reading it, because when you read it, you actually hear it. And then I hear like my mistakes, or I hear something that I could have put differently, or some things that I could have deleted. But with this particular piece, I didn't have the time, so I sent it as it was. I'm done.
Geraldine, is this a national publication? Is it a national publication that where this will appear?
Honestly, I really don't know all of that. My daughter sent me the information. I couldn't read it. She actually read the guidelines to me, and I submitted it. So honestly, I didn't even look to see whether it would be published, or, I just looked at what the guidelines were. So I would have to have my daughter help me get that information. I was not able to read the poster online. It was a little unclear. And even with my enlarger machine, I couldn't read the information. But I'll make sure I get that information to you guys.
No, please do.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
I'm sorry.
Question raised.
Rosetta.
Christopher has his hand up.
Okay.
Yes, first of all, I just wanted to say congratulations, Geraldine, on this poem. And I really thought that the way you portrayed homelessness, I've seen similar populations. I was a social worker. I think you could really set this to music and make a great rap song, or some kind of spoken word poetry out of this. I was wondering, have you? I'm not real familiar with necessarily the rap genre or hip hop as much as I should be, but have you considered collaborating with a rap artist or something of that nature set to that movie, set to that genre? Because I think it would be great, especially that poem.
Can I respond?
Absolutely. Over. I should say over.
This is Geraldine. I have not. I hate to admit that rap is probably rap is a genre that I haven't really engaged a whole lot in. So I never thought about putting it to rap. But that's a good suggestion. One of the things that I'm learning through this class is not to be so closed-minded, to be a little bit open-minded, and send my poetry to wherever it needs to go. I'm done. Thank you.
Oh, Geraldine, that's a great comment. There are so many things throughout the next 4 sessions after this that I have to say that'll speak to that. One thing that I take personally from that comment of Christopher and your response is that I have performed my poetry in every conceivable venue, in so many different configurations, one of them being this Peace Garden poem that the mayor is going to introduce this afternoon. But the other thing that I've done is to perform with musicians, and again, it's not rap, but it's a kind of a musical accompaniment, or a pairing is probably the better word. I've worked with a classical violist and a classical bassist now, and we have this trio. I perform my poems, and they provide musical interludes in between the poems. What's the purpose of this, and what can you all take from this? I think what happens in a situation like this is, very often when you hear a poem, you need a little bit of time for reflection. The musical interlude provides that. It also sets up a number of other associations in your mind. And if the musical interludes are chosen well, they lead directly into the next performed piece that I do. So, this is fine. And if you have a lot of poems to read, as I do, I've often learned that less is more. That is, you need to provide that reflection time. A lot of times, if you go to open mics and whatever, it's just one person rattling off one after the other. You don't have time for reflection, and most of the people there are really there to read rather than to listen to others. And incidentally, that's so different about this one. You won't, it would be so rare to find this kind of experience at open mics. You all listen to each other. And maybe that's because many of us have a visual challenge, or maybe it's just that you're really serious about what you're doing. I think a little bit of both. And so think about where you can perform this. And I think you want to think of that because so you've won a contest and it's fabulous and we've celebrated, but you don't want it to stop there. You want to do readings, recitations. I would rather call them performances. So you really need to think about the next step. And maybe you want to collaborate with someone else just in the reading. You have point counterpoint. Nora and I are kind of an example of that. We're a team. You can do team reading too. So think about your next step with the poetry. You don't just want it to die or be limited to the people who will read the publication that will come out. Think of, is there another life you can generate for it? Over. Let me go back into this. This is the same with memoir. Mike, you can perform your memoir. Somebody I edited a book for wrote a very fine book on Gold Star mothers, and she felt the best way to sell that book was to visit VFWs, to visit all sorts of militarily related venues, and go to Kiwanis clubs, Lions, Rotary. These are things that are worth thinking about, whatever you're writing, whether you're writing prose or poetry. And how you sell books, if it means anything to you to sell books or to have them in other people's hands, is the most important thing. You've got to get out there. Over.
Is it okay if people start to bring their readings in?
Yes, we would like to.
Christopher had signed up first.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. I kind of wasn't expecting to go first necessarily, but I will admit I've been a little bit behind. I've had some family issues. My dad was just diagnosed with bladder cancer and had a restaging, had it removed, and we're going to get the results of that. But so not to go into my own issues, but this poem is a response to the assignment on pivotal moments from 2 weeks ago. And I wanted to just mention before I start this poem that I think that it would also dovetail very well with Geraldine's poem on blindness. And we are both blind travelers, even though I don't do as much travel as I would like to necessarily, since I work at home. And this poem taps into that and an experience I had and some other issues with job accommodation. This poem is entitled Workplace Accommodations. Leaving the stadium on such a hazy Saturday and following the crowds of people to the street, waiting for a bus that would take me to beloved relatives on a journey vivid but discreet. Boarding the bus, taking me on a route replete with long ago memories of childhood, when the path of my life was clear. I hear a distinct familiarity in the driver's voice and tone, as the bus begins its grinding path alone. So what are you doing here? I banter casually with the driver as I ride along, the path of life that I have chosen. Not sure if right or wrong, as the inexorable drone of the bus grinds on, superimposed with everyday conversations. It's the same driver that takes me to this uncertain job each morning, where I struggle to find ground with my employers and clients. And I heed the increasingly urgent warnings that threaten my very self-reliance as I struggle for workplace accommodations. Now on a path I know extremely well from my days learning the skills of blindness. I've already covered my beloved aunt and solicited her kindness to fulfill a desperate need, one essential to my very existence. But I feel a sense of unease and guilt in expressing my sudden and abrupt insistence in attempts to maintain the life I lead. Am I not on a crooked path? Only time will tell. My casual banter with the driver ends. Now arrived at my aunt's Cape Cod, in many ways the birthplace of my soul. Now on a path new but once trod, in a distant but vivid past. I enjoy an hour of pleasant, profound conversation with relatives whose company represents contrasts with me and my life's goals, as I now struggle for workplace accommodations on a journey to the presence of God. Their presence is an elixir for me now, as I am now called home in their sight, brought there through the use of alternative skills retained, drawn toward a distant and holy light that is called to me all along, as I pursue my life's journeys with my white king, not fully knowing if right or wrong. Over. Over.
I think everybody's muted.
They were.
Okay, can you hear now?
Yes.
Yes.
Processing of what?
Did anybody hear what I said? I was asking for comments from the group, the response to that powerful poem about the nature of blindness. And I did have a question for Christopher. You know, we all have the challenge of seeing the page. What did you use to read that from, Christopher?
Wow. Unfortunately, I don't have a Braille display as much as I'd like it. I just understand that Library of Congress has just made the e-reader available. If I'd had that, I would have read this in Braille. But I was just using, I'm on my laptop and I have my headphones. And I wrote this poem in the latest version of Microsoft Word. And I just had JAWS narrating as I was reading the poem. I'm on my headphones so that the JAWS doesn't interfere with the reading and the narration. But if I had done this in a spoken word form or live in person, I would have probably used either a Braille display or most likely a Braille copy.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for asking that question, by the way. Over.
Any other responses? Yes, Stacey Abrams, right here in the room in the Lewiston Public Library. Go ahead.
It's Adams.
Adams.
Okay.
Adams.
Hi, this is Stacey. I really like the way that you sort of talked about your other senses. You noticed the driver's tone. You heard the grinding of the bus, those kind of things I could almost feel them, and it really added a lot of that to the story. Over.
This is Nora commenting. I think everybody in this room and everybody online would fully understand what that bus drive, the bus ride involved, your problems and your solutions. So I thought it was excellent, Christopher.
Thank you.
Mike.
Yeah, I liked it, and I think it captured the uncertain nature of any condition, physical condition that a person will go through.
Yes, Bob here again. Yeah, that is the dealing with uncertainty is a very real thing that we all know about, and yes, that poem did capture a lot of that. Question for Christopher again. If you could summarize in a way, how do you deal with uncertainty? What you seem to imply reference to a higher power, but practically speaking too, what is your technique for dealing with uncertainty, your strategy?
Honestly, anxiety. We wanted to be brutally honest. Part of that poem was really not dealing with uncertainty as well as maybe a lot of people would. We'll just give you some background about this poem. This was an incident that occurred quite a few years ago. It was actually in 2003 when I left social work. And at that time, I was just being in the process of diagnosed with autism spectrum disorders. And the issue I ran into seeking accommodations was as much a feature of that, I think, and stress related to the job. The job was in social work. It was an absolute nightmare. Computer accommodations weren't available. There was limited transportation. And I was actually, interestingly enough, this poem revolves around a day in which we traveled to a Cincinnati Reds game. And I ended up deciding in the 8th inning to essentially take this trip to this favorite aunt's house that I have. And my mom and my aunt don't get along. We are strange. My parents are estranged from my aunt, but I still communicate with her, which is sort of a theme. Has actually been an overriding theme of some of the poetry I've written, and some life experiences and prayers and so forth. So to answer your question directly, Bob, about my basically prayer, but honestly, in some cases, not very well. I tend to be not a very good risk taker. In terms of uncertainty, it provokes a lot of anxiety. Like, for example, we had a situation in my family. My dad was diagnosed of cancer, and he had a surgery yesterday to do what's called a restaging to determine what stage of cancer in his bladder was. And I'll be honest with you, I was very anxious that entire day yesterday. It was not an easy day at all. But to answer, but this is essentially a poem that involves me taking a bus to this aunt's house, and ultimately she and my uncle, her husband, and I ended up. It's actually interesting because my aunt was actually my parents who were married, and we just celebrated. My parents just celebrated their wedding anniversary on Thursday, but it's mainly about an experience that I had, and ultimately leading to joining a faith, joining a church, and being involved in that process. So I probably didn't answer your question fully about how do I deal with uncertainty, but let's just say that it was a transition in my life and a pivotal moment dealing with uncertainty, and it was something I still struggle with.
Thanks, Christopher. Bob back again. Maybe it's a good time to move to Mike, because perhaps this this whole notion of uncertainty resonates with you.
You want me to read?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
When would the
The title is A Job. I could not believe I would officially no longer be a Marine the next day. I had already signed my discharge papers the previous day. I began to wonder, what would life be like as a civilian? Every day got mapped out for me in the Marines, or at least every week. Would I know anyone, as most of my friends were now married or gone? Would I adjust to living with my parents? Would I be able to find a job? What would the girls that were available be like when I wanted to date? I went to bed that night with all these questions ruminating in my mind. On the other hand, I was excited about this new adventure, civilian life. But I was anxious about what those answers might be. Could I make it outside the Marines? The next day, I dressed in civilian clothes and walked to my car. I got to the base gate and took one long last look at my home from the previous 8 months. I had a feeling of loss. That was strange, since I hated the regimen of military life. Did I really know what I wanted? Once on I-95, I turned on the radio and listened to music during the 4-hour drive. During the drive, the afterburn started. The closer I got to my family's home, the more I had second thoughts. The last 8 months as a military escort had been better than the previous 2 years. I had less monitoring of my life. When on escorts, I ran the show, and when back at the base, I had more free time. Had I made the wrong decision on leaving the Marine Corps? I had been promoted 3 times during my 3-year enlistment in the Corps, and the gunny had promised me the rank of sergeant if I re-enlisted for 4 more years. It was unheard of for a Marine to make sergeant in 3 years. The gunny was my superior. He had explained I had 30 days to change my mind after discharge. Yet I had never been happy with military life, being shot at in the jungles of Vietnam, beaten by my drill instructors in basic training, left an unpleasant taste in my mouth, even if the last 8 months had been better. Basic training would never be repeated. However, the Corps' only reason for existence was their mission to fight in foreign countries. If I re-enlisted, there was no doubt in my mind I would be fighting down the road in some godforsaken land. That was a deal breaker for me. The drive ended at 1250 North Brad Street, my family's house. I knocked on the door, no answer, so I walked in. Hello, I am home. Anybody here? My mother walked out of the kitchen and over to me, giving me a hug and a sloppy kiss on my cheek. I was not expecting you. Come into the kitchen and I'll cook something for you. Is breakfast okay? Though it is 12 noon. Yes. I sat down, then it started. What are your plans? I was thinking, Jesus Christ, I just got home. I am not sure. Well, you'll have to either find a job or go to college. You can't do nothing. I realized she only wanted me to succeed, but my mom could be aggressive, even when trying to help. I have never responded well to aggressive people. I felt intimidated by them and became aggressive too. My mother grew up during the Depression, so a job was security. A successful son would work for 40 years at one company like my father and retire with a gold watch. I had just had 3 years of security and wanted no more of that. Now I wanted to spread my wings and take flight. When I was 8 years old, I bought tropical fish tank and bred guppies, becoming successful enough to sell the offspring to the neighborhood kids. That entrepreneurial pattern would resurface throughout my life. However, I understood her anxiety because I had always gotten in trouble growing up, burning a field of hay, blowing a hole in my chest while trying to build a rocket. Whereas my brother was an excellent student and never got in trouble. I remember her saying on many occasions, do not do something that will reflect bad on your father's name. She even warned me not to bring home a black girlfriend. She was afraid I would marry one. Some women during that time were against mixed races. Was my mother a racist? It sure looked like it to me. Some of my best friends in the Corps were black. On another occasion, she got angry at a lunch counter waitress for refusing to serve a black boy before us, although he was first in line. She had a fierce sense of right and wrong, but it was tempered by the times. After eating breakfast the next day, my mom brought the paper to me. I opened it and scanned the want ads. All the ads said degree required. I was a college dropout. I qualified for nothing. The ritual repeated itself for days until I saw an ad for a factory worker at West Vaco. No degree required. I got dressed, drove to the company. There was a receptionist behind a glass enclosure. I walked up and said, I am applying for a manufacturing opening. The receptionist, here is an application. Please fill it out. Why the hell did I have to fill out an application for what was a menial job? 3/4 of the application was irrelevant. 5 years of experience in 3 jobs with references. For an hourly job? Really? I thought I had left that type of absurd nonsense behind leaving the military. I filled out the application with gaping holes. Most of it did not apply to me, and returned it to the receptionist. Have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly. 20 minutes later, a young woman approached me. She asked me to follow her, which I did. Once in her office, she began reading my application in silence. Her facial features showed she was perplexed. You have not put any experience on your application. What have you done for the last 3 years? I've been in the Marine Corps for the last 3 years. Well, what did you learn there? I could see this interview was going nowhere. I learned to fire a 106 rifle and a flamethrower. She did not look pleased with my answer. The interviewer had not met a trained killer before. My guess was she wanted some experience I did not have. Surely you have some other experience. Yes, I was a military escort. What is that? I was responsible for taking the Marines killed in action home to their family. No, I mean practical manufacturing experience, as this is a manufacturing company, a factory or technical job in the Marines. Was she out of her mind? The only reason the Corps exists was to train killers, then send them into a war or military action. No, I do not have any manufacturing experience. Was she for real? I was applying for this job because I did not have any civilian experience. How the hell would I get experience if I was required to have experience? She got up abruptly and said she would get back to me. I could tell this interview was a waste of time. She was clearly not impressed. I could not get out of there fast enough. I drove home frustrated that I could not even get this low-level job. Once in the house, my mom began. How did it go? Now, well, not well, as she asked for experience, and I have none. I'm done.
Well, you, I believe, read part of that. You revised some of it and added the whole experience of the interview and the trip home and the slobber kiss and and whatnot. No, you write extremely well, and as usual, you stop at a point that provides a little bit of suspense. What's going to come next? As an aside, quick aside, one of the things I did was to, in my own background, I was a career counselor, and one of the things that I did in that particular capacity was to work with a lot of people who were in a similar fashion. I also worked with executives too, but every single person throughout the chain of employment, from chief executive down to the lowest person on that totem pole, when a job is lost or you have to change a job, it's about as stressful an experience as losing a spouse or being diagnosed with a serious illness. It ranks right up there. And one of the things that interviewer was asking you that I really was able to train people to do is to think somewhat outside the box. What do I mean by that? What did you learn in training for? Well, if you can think of some of the things they're looking for, a sense of responsibility, a sense of being able to follow direction, to take a bit of initiative when you have to to be totally in charge of arranging and escort things. So your skills in scheduling, your skills in all those things, which might have been good. To take a very homely example, I was involved in the closing down of a sawmill in Creedmoor, North Carolina, and one of the people was the floor sweeper, and he said, what can I tell anyone? Well, what you can tell someone who asked what did you learn from that job? All those things I mentioned about responsibility. And I asked him, why was the floor sweeping important? And he responded, well, if people slipped on that sawdust, that's how accidents occurred. I said, did any accidents occur on your watch? And he said, no. So I said, what was the safety record of the company? Perfect safety record while he was involved. I said, you can claim participation in that. And that changed the whole attitude in terms of feeling some sense of self-confidence in making application for a job totally outside, totally difficult in that situation. Okay, I don't want to go on with that, but to say that really the story that you tell is I'm really anxious to see where it does lead. We have about a half hour left, and there are 5 people: Helen, Rosetta, Chris, Dan, and Shima, who could give us some things to read. We've heard from Helen before. We've heard from Rosetta. What I'd like to do is go down through Chris, Dan, and Shima if we have time, because they are new and I want them to get a sense of participation in this. So if we could start with Chris, do you have anything to offer in terms of something you've written or anything you want to discuss or comment upon? Chris?
It's Christina.
Oh, okay, yeah. Christina, are you there? Or maybe she's left.
No, she's here.
Can you unmute yourself if you think you're muted? Let's come back to Chris. Let's try with Dan. Dan, are you on? Can you hear us? Hello, Kelly. Do we have Dan still with us?
Mm-hmm. They just didn't know you're in a call.
Oh, okay. All right, Shima is the other person online. Would you like to participate in any way or say something at this point?
Hi guys. Sure. Actually, I had written a poem. This was a while ago. I sometimes go back and edit it a little bit, but since we're on the topic of poetry, I can share it, and I would like to hear you guys' feedback if you have any. Okay, so this poem is called Paper People. We are paper people in a paper town, living in a world where paper succeeds, although it is not paper that breathes. Drawn from shades, but not of colors, made with life but cannot breathe, we are paper people following our paper deeds. Or is it paper greed? Paper commands, paper pretends, and paper follows where paper bends, then leads by example. Paper took away a father away from his family, and his time was never free enough. His goodbyes never had enough. Paper took a daughter away from her youth. Her scores were never high enough, and her work was never hard enough. Paper took a mother away from her health. The price was never high enough, and her legs did not stand enough. Paper took away a son from his truth. His mind never became sound enough because the meds didn't seem to work enough. Never enough. Paper follows where paper bends and leads by example. We are paper people in a paper town, living in a world where paper succeeds, although it is not paper that breathes. We must not be paper. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very, very much. Just enlighten me, have you been on this call before, but this is your very first time?
I think she's in the car. please.
This is my first time, yes.
Oh, okay. All right, all right. We will leave you to your drive. Any,
She wanted comments.
There
oh,
was comments.
okay, comments from anyone?
I'm not in a car. Wait, are you
Oh.
asking if I was in a car?
Yeah, I thought
Okay.
you were.
Oh no, I'm not in a car. No, I'm just sitting in my bedroom. I'm like totally fine. Don't worry.
All right.
You may be
Okay.
looking at Stacy.
Okay, I think it was
Stacy's in a vehicle.
somebody's in
Okay.
the car. All right.
Yeah, Shima, where are you from, Shima?
Toronto, you said, right?
Yes, Toronto.
Oh, good. Okay. How did you hear of this and how did you get involved?
So I really liked writing poetry, but I always felt like I wanted to like improve my skills, or just like at least like learn some techniques and stuff to improve. And I usually just write just for myself, but yeah, just curious because I like reading and I wanted to hear what other people had to say and what they have and learn from them as well.
Oh, good. Okay, well, I hope this will be helpful to you. Really, we've moved along rather briskly now into our 6th session, which is quite nice. You were on the verge of this topic that I had asked people to think about, and if any others want to read, you're welcome to, but I would ask you to try to address the topic which you have here. Who do you write for? What is your sense of direction in writing? What's its value to you? And if you would want to comment a little bit on the value that poetry presents for you. And then we'll move on to some others also. Shima?
Yeah, for sure. Hi guys, it's Shima. So to answer the question, who do I write for? To be honest, it's not really for anyone. It's mostly just like if I feel something or if I'm like, if I have something to say, I feel like I think like writing poetry in a way for me is a way to have it down on paper in a way that's like specifically in poetry in a way that's beautiful. So I don't have a direction with who I'm writing for, which is probably something I should do. But for me, it's just a way to like kind of put my thoughts down on paper. Its value to me is, well, this is kind of like things that bother me, things that I feel like people should, I don't know, like things that I feel like is important. So I write it down and I write down my thoughts on it. But you're like very, very right in having a direction and having a place where like an audience. I mean, like when you say who do you write for, I'm assuming you're talking about audience. I'll keep that in mind for next time when I'm writing. But for now, I just write for myself, really.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong in writing for yourself, but if we think of improvement of skills and trying to move forward as a writer or as a poet, I think you have to think of who you're writing for, and maybe that will change. So I think that's something to keep in mind as we move through this.
I have a question for Shima. Shima, this is Nora. You're telling a lot of stories in that poem, and I assume it's autobiographical. And I'm very interested in knowing what is the background of the poem. You're talking about a place, you're talking about many things. And I would like to know just give me the background of the people involved, the town involved, the industry involved, if you can.
Hi, Lauren. So for this paper, it's It's really just about people in my life that are important to me. It's like when I say father, mother, brother, sister, this was kind of like a syntax thing. They're not actually like my brother or my, you know, my sister or whatnot. Their story represent like people in my life that like I watch and I don't like how it's going. Do you know what I mean? Like, because for example, the one that I relate with, for example, is the student one with her scores and her work. And then I look at it and I see a pattern. And when I see a pattern, like I see a pattern with like, and feeling the not enough kind of thing, like this pattern of like continuously working hard. And we're in this society where it's always like asking for this is going into like a bigger conversation, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like when I saw a pattern in the people in my life and with myself, and I put it down as a story. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if I've answered your question properly, but I hope I did.
This is spoken as a poet. And I think what Nora is implying too is that many of the things that you could try if you wanted to delve into memoirs, to take a lot of those incidents and write them out as prose, as mini stories. But really, this idea of seeing patterns which call out to you to be expressed, that's the urge of a poet. And also observation too. I mean, that's at the heart of seeing the patterns. Poets are observers, and they ask questions of what they observe, and also then try to figure who needs to hear this also, and that's the voice of a poet. So, okay.
Stacey has her hand up.
Okay, Stacey. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say that poem on the paper was so profound and so well written and good. And it's something that I think is going to sit with me for probably the rest of the day, because when she was reading, I liked how she said paper bends and it's flexible. And it made me think about all the times that, like, we're born, we have a birth certificate, you die, you have a death certificate, it's all in the paper. You're drafted for war, to fight in the war, you get a paper, and the importance of each paper and the changes through life. And I thought it was excellent. I really liked that poem. I thought it was very 2022, very modern, I feel like it really spoke to me on a lot of different levels. And then I was even thinking about the recycling of paper. Where has this paper been? And how many lives has each paper touched? And paper, I never saw any real significance to it in itself.
Yeah, from a
that poem made me think about all these things and all these different levels. And I just really liked it. Reminds me of Jennifer Campbell at ECC, her work. Okay, that's all. Okay.
Thank you so much.
No, those are great.
That literally made my day. That comment made my day. Thank you so much.
Well, those are great comments
They are. Yeah,
on a very nice piece. And I think also the poem illustrates another structural principle of poetry. That is, the theme is very clear, and the theme has a number of ramifications. And throughout that poem, the repetition of the paper in its various aspects, it's a unified piece. And that's the hardest thing, I think, that fledgling poets, or even a lot of experienced poets, deal with, making sure that every word in the piece relates to every other word. And that's the unity of expression and the unity of theme, and you do that in this. So it's a very good piece to, what should we say, illustrate a very important principle of really accomplished poetry, which is to have a unity through the theme. I'm sure you've all heard poems where there's just a flood of metaphors and they go off in all different directions. Well, the job of the poet is to get that kernel down so that people can open it up, not be flooded with with all the nuts that the squirrel has packed up during the summer and now coming out of the trees in winter. You really need to think structurally in much of poetry writing, and that certainly illustrates the principle. Over. Let's hear, is Dan around or not?
Dana said no.
Okay, how about, let's hear from, Helen has written a poem.
And Froggy is also on the line. She's joined us.
Oh, okay.
So you want Helen first?
Yes, Helen
All right,
first.
Helen, you need a microphone?
And Helen, if you'll comment on the thing that I've asked others to comment on before you read, what's the value of poetry to you? And what do you see as the value you want to communicate to others?
Oh, hold on a second.
That's right, we can hear.
The value of poetry to me
Yes.
is expressing myself, which I never did before. It makes me think in a different way than I used to writing. I've always wrote about what happened in real life and things like that, but I saw. Well, this workshop has taught me other ways of writing, which I kind of enjoy. Like when I wrote this poem, I was asked by someone to express what I thought. And it was difficult at first until I got started, but I'm not used to writing like this. But I've learned so much with this workshop. I think I'm going to start doing my own life story. You see what happens. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to read the piece you wrote?
The same one or the different one?
Magic?
Okay.
Okay, Magic is a
I'll
good
read that
title.
one. My library. As I opened the door to the library, I slipped into another realm where books are calling out to me, come and visit for a spell. Here among us, you will find adventure, fantasy, magic, romance, anything you might fancy. Suddenly, felt like something magical happening as I walked right through a looking glass. I think I was enchanted. Glancing around to get my bearings, viewed elves working on a jigsaw puzzle, phones on computers, others looking for a book, dwarfs playing chess, a ghost flitting through and around the aisles of books. As I touched a book, our story would begin, showing deeper within the labyrinth of books, finding features and characters all wanting to tell their story. As I stepped out of the library back into my world, returning from my magical world, wondering what it would be like at night. Would all the creatures and characters in the books be having fun? Would the resident ghosts come out and play?
Very, very nice. We could hear the unified theme in there, right? Yes. If you had to comment again on yourself, what are some other things that are different from the way you wrote before when you did prose?
I'm starting to understand that when I wrote before was just blunt. I was just write down what I saw, but now I'm learning to express myself, which I did. And I have been going back through things I have written. I have a journal, so I've been writing and looking at it and trying to update what I've learned and filling it in with before I didn't have the people's, I didn't have the person's name down, or I didn't explain it thoroughly for someone else to know that outside the family. But I'm willing to express it so other people will know what I'm talking about, not just the people that I'm writing it for.
This is Nora commenting. For the newcomers, Helen has spent many years writing obituaries for family members and friends and other people. She researches them. She writes about other people's lives. She is saying that this workshop is inspiring her to write about her own life, which I find very interesting and rewarding. Over.
Lauren,
Helen, I loved your poem and I love how you've retained your descriptive style, but it's evolved to definitely become more poetic. So I really see the change that you're talking about, and it's fantastic. I loved your poem and I feel like I was right in it because of what terrific descriptive language you use. So thank you.
That's lovely.
Well, thank you. I was keeping a little push with this one.
Loved it.
that's great. Oh,
How about Froggy? Does Froggy have?
oh, Froggy, do you have something? Froggy. Hello.
I don't know where Froggy is.
Hang on, I had I had unmute. I ran outside with the dog out.
Do you have something?
Yes, I do. I
Okay.
do. Let me.
Away. Oh,
I'm-
but first your comment on value that, you know, that we've started to go to get various perspectives on the value of poetry to you and the value you see for others. And so if you'd comment on that briefly as a prelude to what you want to read, please.
I think that with poetry or I'm sorry, or anything you want to put across to others, that the value lies within it lies within what you want to communicate. And just because your poetry is about one particular subject doesn't mean that it can't apply to and or be interesting to another. Does that make sense?
Yes, perfect, perfect sense. And, you know, I've mentioned before about poetry as being a communicative art. It's a conversational art. And so there, you know, the meaning of it takes place between the writer and the reader, and the actual meaning is somewhat fluid out there. The meaning is in that center between the writer and the reader, or the writer, the presenter, and the listener. And but definitely, I think there is a conversational aspect implied in all the writing of good poetry. Over.
Okay. This is this week's piece. It's called Insignificantly Significant. To choose a moment that changed your life or placed you upon a path is significantly insignificant, impossible. Every moment of your life leads you to the next moment. And without all of those small insignificant moments, the significant would never exist. You never learn to cook until you learn to turn on the stove. You never learn to love without first learning heartbreak. Our lives lead us in many directions. No matter the choice you make, it will be significant, for you yourself are significant.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
She was doing part.
Oh, that's nice.
Nice. And Mike, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I thought it was tight together, talking about, you know, your life and how life unfolds, and the insignificant makes the significant, because you can't have the significant without the insignificant. I thought it was well done.
Thank you.
Yep. let's see, we've got about 7 minutes, and we are going to be a pumpkin at this time, and at the end of that 7 minutes, let me give you, if I may, sort of like that John Bears Fitz-Tipton thing, your assignment, should you choose to take it for next time, is to, I'd really like to see how we write about the same subject from our own different perspectives. And I think we'll all learn a lot from each other in this. The subject will be a rose, and that's not chosen gratuitously. Gertrude Stein, the famous poet and autobiographical writer who was a friend of Hemingway and all, is famous for the line, "A rose is a rose is a rose is a rose." And that was her contribution to modern poetry that sticks with her memory. The reason for a rose is, some of us have seen a rose, some of us haven't seen a rose. Some of us see a rose through a glass darkly. Let's all think about a rose. You can write a prose poem or a lineated poem, and just describe the effect. What effect does a rose have? What is its nature? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What do you imagine it's like? And what does it mean? So a rose is a rose is a rose. I hope we will have a whole bunch of short pieces, or maybe longer ones next time, either prose poem or lineated poem. And the lineated poem doesn't necessarily have to rhyme, but let's see what happens. I'm hoping this will be a fun session from which we'll learn a lot, and it will be conversational. Okay, over now. If we have one other person who may want to read, that's Rosetta.
Yes, Rosetta.
Okay. And you have about 5 minutes before we sign off. If we have to sign off without ceremony, please understand this time. Okay, take it away, Rosetta, please.
Hi. So the value of writing for me was basically getting things down. And in the case of this piece that I'm going to read only part of, because we're limited on time, is, I've been trying to find relationships or relatives, ancestry, and finding out where I came from. And then I think about it, and then even with my children, not understanding who and where we belong in some cases, which is not really true. Don't take this literally. But as time goes, I do know that I am somehow related to over 350 people from the Carolinas up through the East, and both coasts, East and West. Nevertheless, what would I tell my children or grandchildren about me? Because I'm still trying to understand who my parents were. So value to me is just being able to transition that oral history to written history. And so in my travels through the Carolinas, I learned a lot of things about what's there. And I'm just going to jump down, and maybe if we have more time next time, I'll read the entire piece. But there's a lot of food going on. Building relationships through good food and, hospitality. So that's where this piece is coming from. Let's go to Nothing beats moseying down the road a piece to a Southern style family gathering, where usually a delectable meal awaits. That meal may include pulled pork in place of Northern style barbecue ribs with the bone in and lots of sauce. Or fried chicken, fried catfish with buttered beans or collards cooked with fat back and sweet cornbread. All complimenting old granny and her famous recipes. After dinner, desserts such as peach and apple cobbler, banana pudding, pound cake with a scoop of homemade ice cream, and to die for Aunt Sarah red velvet cake. Unlike those overly processed Sara Lee cakes, if you know what I mean, sold from a freezer at the local grocer. Aunt Sarah from Henderson is the real deal. And then Uncle Charlie shows up with his jar of pickled pig feet. Frequently, my adventurous nature leads me to accept sincere invitations to trailer parks in Gaston, Gates, or Halifax County to visit some elderly friend or cousin. I relish those visits, not because I enjoy seeing the dilapidated structures called homes. Substandard living conditions of any kind are a pet peeve of mine. These trailers remind me of the corrugated cardboard boxes used to shelter the homeless from inclement weather. And I'll end with this last paragraph. I visited acres of farmland formerly harvested by bondsmen while hurricanes brought viable flooding tears. I went there because common decency still exists and all share a single gesture of courtesy. And I'll end right there.
Perfect timing. Wow.
I want to comment.
Okay.
I love to end on this note. As a foodie, this was a wonderful ending. It's almost time for lunch too. Wonderfully written, and I really want to hear the whole piece. I just love it.
Yeah.
So,
And
I agree.
It was so conversational. It was wonderful.
Yes, it
really,
was.
Really.
Can't wait to hear the rest of it.
Yeah. And can we maybe we ought to have a little banquet at the end.
I think Mike wants to comment too.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I think she should read the whole piece first next time. Because I think it's kind of robbing her of feedback, not being able to do that.
Yeah.
Except we're all salivating.
No. So I just want to make one comment. I wanted to, Geraldine is such an inspiration. You all are, but how she tells the story. And sometimes I feel my pieces are lacking that push conversation between persons. And I think I want to get there, and I'll leave it at that.
This is Geraldine, real quick, Rosetta, being a South Carolina girl, my parents were born in South Carolina. I lived in, I could taste the food, I could smell the food, I could see the road, I could, relate with the grandmother. I can't wait to hear that full piece. Hopefully you'll be able to do it next week. First, I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm done. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I think we're losing some sound here.
Oh,
Yeah,
we definitely are.
And your poem.
That's because around here we're wrapping up because Bob's getting ready to do his celebrity appearance. But I wanted to say, let me turn this off. All right. I wonder if I can actually hear. No, I can't.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, unless I keep the headphones on. Can't hear you. But I want to say, number one, Rosetta, amazing piece.
Thank you.
And two, just like we learned about the grilled cheese from Jen Long, we are planning a banquet for the end of this. And now I know Sara Lee cake is not acceptable.
You know, Kelly, we should have a side book for recipes.
I love that. Since those of you who are just joining us know that the end goal of our session is to publish an anthology. I don't know if you guys said the word anthology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So please consider what pieces you'd like to have considered for that. And Lauren's idea of doing a cookbook with it actually means we might sell some. So please think of your recipes when you're thinking of your roses. That'll be what's going on there. So, anybody else want to talk? Say goodbye.
Bye.
Stacey.
Bye, Lauren.
Bye. I would like to say
goodbye, John Boy.
congratulations to Bob, and let you guys know that I'm reading poetry in church tomorrow. So I did take
nice
questions.
Oh,
Bob, Geraldine says good luck and congratulations.
I would like to share my stepmother's rose poem.
Oh, then next week you're on
No,
it.
I want to share it now. It's so
Oh,
short.
do it.
And it's so bad. Her name
I
is
love that.
Wilma Louise, and here's the poem. I am a rose. I have petals and a thorn. That's it.
Oh, kind of cute, though. Cute.
That's your inspiration for next week.
It works
Now,
for
would
me.
you put that under the category of microfiction?
Heck
I
yeah.
don't know.
You know, the Hemingway's most famous microfiction, I think it's like 7 words long. And it was baby shoes for sale, never worn.
I read that piece and was extremely
Yeah.
inspired. I wrote a lot of baby shoe pieces based
That's
on
it.
that. From that, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I
heartbreaking.
found that during trying to figure out what you guys are talking about as far as microfiction and flash fiction and all of that. And that's the first poem I came across. And I go, wow, that was just blew my mind because it says so much.
And that's the key. And especially nowadays with this concept of tweeting and short attention spans, how do we put all of those feelings in a small enough piece for it to be digested and still have an impact? So that's actually, speaking of that, on the 10th, which is Tuesday, I'll send a note to everyone. I hate listening to myself. Oh my God. All right, I take those off. So I can't hear you. On Tuesday, we're going to do the microfiction book club. So we'll read the piece at the beginning of the book club. That'll be at 11 o'clock 11 to 30. Gosh, I'm at everything, so I can't tell times. I'll email you when the actual times are if anyone wants to. But taking a look at the super shorts condenses our story down. As a matter of fact, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the famous pastoral novelist Hardy, Thomas Hardy, who wrote in the 18th century, and he wrote these huge, really long, really complicated novels. But every single one of his novels started with his response to newspaper articles in the form of poetry. He would read something in the news, and he would imagine somebody's life. He'd create characters, and that's how he did his character profiles. Were all in poetry or super short fiction, and then they would evolve into these larger stories. But his primary focus was that, and I have always loved it. And even after reading his novels, I would go back and read these portraits of people in poetry or scenes and things in poetry that would really impact me. And I think that those pieces of microfiction and learning how to do microfiction is essentially learning how to do the elevator speech for the things you find most important. And that's my take on it.
I do have to go. My kids are celebrating Mother's Day with me today. But I do want to say to all of you mothers, and whether you birth children or not, or mother or anyone else, to have a happy Mother's Day. And I'll talk with you guys next week.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day, everybody.
You're all the parents of poems.
Yes. Yes.
Happy Mother's Day. Bye now. Have a great
Bye.
week.
Today we all identify as mothers of poets. Rosetta, are you there? Oh, I lost her.